Okay, so have you seen this thing that's all over X today?
What's that?
It's March 18th, 2025, by the way, in case anyone's listening in the future.
Right, right.
But yeah, there's this optical illusion going around, and it's
Yeah.
like, can you spot the hidden parrot?
Oh, I think I saw that one.
It's so sneaky.
Yeah.
I've already spent way too much time on it, and it just like makes you think, what is going on in our brains?
Yeah, you really do start to question your own perception.
Yeah, like why do we fall for these things?
Absolutely. And, it's funny you should mention that because
Yeah.
it kind of perfectly tees up what we wanted to look into today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because this whole thing, this visual puzzle, right?
Right.
It actually touches on some like really basic, really fundamental things about how we think, how we see the world.
I like that, because it seems so simple on the surface, but there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
And that's actually why we're taking this deep dive today into this amazing book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, that's a great one.
Have you read it?
I have, yeah.
You mentioned it before. It's
Yeah.
a really influential book.
And a
And
lot of people are talking about it.
especially, like, I know Vitalik Buterin,
Uh-huh.
the co-founder of Ethereum, he had a whole thing about it.
He's really into it, yeah.
So our mission today is to kind of break down some of the big ideas from Thinking Fast and Slow and really try to understand how those ideas help explain
Yeah,
why we see or don't see that darn parrot.
great.
And even bigger than that, what this tells us about why some things just take off online.
Right, exactly. Like, why do certain trends capture our attention the way they do?
Yeah, and we've got some really interesting stuff here that I think gives us a great overview of the book
Okay.
and how it connects to what we're seeing right now in the digital world.
Okay, great.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, so for anyone who hasn't read Thinking Fast and Slow, I'll just give a super quick overview.
Yeah, please.
So Daniel Kahneman, he's like a big deal in psychology, won a Nobel Prize and everything. And he came up with this model of how our thinking works.
Okay.
And he basically says, we have these two systems.
Two systems.
Yeah, two
There you
systems.
go.
System 1 and System 2.
Yep.
System 1, that's the one that just like operates automatically.
Oh, like without even thinking about it.
Yeah, really quickly. It just sort of happens. You don't have to put any effort into it. It's just there.
So that's like your gut reaction to things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those like instant gut reactions.
Oh, okay.
Or like when you just know the answer to something right away without even really thinking about it.
Like,
Like if I were to ask you what's 2 plus 2,
4.
right? You didn't have to like sit down and calculate it. It just popped into your head.
Yeah, that's system 1.
System 1, exactly.
Okay, I'm getting it.
And then there's System 2.
Okay, the other system.
Right. And this is where things get a little more effortful.
Okay.
This is the part of your brain that's involved in like complex calculations. Like if you were doing your taxes or something.
I hate that.
Or like when you're really trying to focus your attention on something or like
Yeah.
thinking through a problem step by step.
Okay.
It's slower. It takes concentration.
So system 2 is when you have to like really sit down and think something through.
That's it.
Got it.
And the really fascinating part is how these two systems are always interacting.
Oh, interesting.
They're both working all the time.
Uh-huh.
And they influence how we see the world,
Right.
how we make decisions sometimes in ways that we don't even realize.
So it's like a constant tug of war in our brains.
You could say that, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And this back and forth between System 1 and System 2,
Yeah.
it can lead to some really predictable patterns in our thinking,
Patterns.
Yeah, like almost like habits of thought.
Okay.
And Kahneman calls these biases.
Biases.
Yeah.
So like what are some examples of those?
Well, one of the really interesting chapters in the book is called The Engine of Capitalism.
Oh, I remember hearing about that one.
Yeah, and it really dives into how overconfidence, often driven by our intuitive system, one plays this huge role in economic decisions.
So like when people make risky investments or something.
Exactly. It's that feeling of, I know this is going to work out.
Oh, yeah.
That can sometimes override a more careful System 2 analysis of the risks involved.
So like you get that gut feeling that something's a good idea even if the numbers don't add up.
Exactly. And it's a classic System 1 trap,
Wow.
It often ignores all this crucial data that System 2 would uncover if it were given the chance.
It's like system 1 is all go, 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 and system 2 is like, hold on a second, let's think about this.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Yeah.
And then there's that other chapter I remember, The Illusion of Validity.
Oh, yes. That one's really relevant to what we were talking about earlier with the whole optical illusion craze.
Right, because it's all about how we can feel so certain about something even when we don't really have all the information.
Right. It's about that feeling of conviction we can have even when the evidence doesn't necessarily back it up.
So like with the parrot picture,
Exactly.
your system one might be telling you, yep, I see it, or nope, nothing there.
Mm.
But if you really slowed down and looked at it carefully.
Yeah, if you engage that system too,
Yeah.
you might see something totally different.
So it's like that first glance that can be so deceiving.
It really can. And it's because System 1 is all about speed efficiency. It's trying to make sense of the world as quickly as possible.
But sometimes it gets things wrong.
Sometimes it does, and that's where System 2 comes in to sort of double-check things.
Okay, so we need to be more aware of those moments when our System 1 might be leading us astray.
Absolutely.
Especially online, where everything moves so fast.
Exactly. It's so easy to just scroll, and make snap judgments based on those first impressions.
And that makes me think about how this all plays out in more complex areas, like, the design of the technology we use every day.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and it's something that a lot of businesses are starting to pay attention to. Yeah, they're realizing that the way our brains work, the way we perceive things, it has huge implications for how we interact with technology, how we engage with content online.
Oh, interesting.
And they're starting to use this knowledge to create more engaging, more effective experiences.
Like how?
Well, think about all the interactive AI-powered stuff that's popping up everywhere these days.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Like those AR filters,
Yeah.
the ones that overlay on your real world.
Oh, yeah.
Or like gamified ads, the ones that make it feel like you're playing a game.
Oh, yeah. Those are kind of fun.
Right, and they're designed to tap into those quick, intuitive responses of System 1.
Makes sense.
It's all about grabbing your attention instantly and giving you that quick hit of engagement that System 1 craves.
And it seems to be working. I mean, I remember reading somewhere that there's been like a 40% increase in engagement with these kinds of interactive experiences.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's a huge number.
It is, and it's only going to get bigger.
Wow.
And it's not just about like fleeting attention.
Yeah.
This stuff can have real-world impact.
Oh, like how?
Well, consider how Ethereum has applied these ideas to their smart contracts.
Okay.
Smart contracts, they're basically like self-executing agreements,
Right.
but they can be kind of tricky to use if you're not careful.
Oh, yeah.
So the Ethereum folks, they've been incorporating principles from behavioral economics, from psychology, to make these contracts more user-friendly.
Oh, so they're taking into account how people actually think and behave.
Exactly.
That's so smart.
Yeah, and it's paying off. There was a report earlier this year that they'd seen like a 15% reduction in user errors.
Wow.
Directly because of these changes.
So they made it easier for people to use these contracts without making mistakes.
Exactly. And that's a really concrete example of how these psychological principles can be applied in the tech world to improve usability to make things more efficient.
It's like they're designing technology that works with our brains instead of against them.
That's a great way to put it.
So cool.
But, it's also important to remember that while leveraging System 1 can be really effective for like initial engagement, grabbing people's attention, for sustained interaction, for building those long-term relationships, businesses need to tap into that more deliberate System 2 thinking.
So they need to provide more substance, more value.
Yeah, they need to create experiences that encourage deeper engagement, not just those quick reactive clicks.
It's like you can't just rely on gimmicks and tricks.
Right. You need to offer something more meaningful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's about playing the long game.
Okay, so let's talk about Vitalik Buterin for a second.
Okay.
Because it's really fascinating to me that someone who's like, at the forefront of blockchain technology finds this book so valuable.
Yeah, he's a big fan.
What's the connection there?
Well, I think what's really insightful about his perspective is that he recognizes that building successful decentralized systems, it's not just about the code.
Yeah.
It's not just about the algorithms.
It's about the people.
It's about the people. Exactly.
Oh, wow.
He said publicly that he applies principles from thinking fast and slow to the very architecture of Ethereum.
No way.
Yeah, he's really focused on designing systems that are intuitive, that are easy to understand.
So he's thinking about how people will actually interact with these systems?
Exactly. He wants to make them as user-friendly as possible.
And that makes sense because Ethereum can be pretty complex.
It can be, yeah, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So his focus on user-centric design, it really aligns with what Kahneman talks about in the book.
Yeah.
Understanding those cognitive biases and designing interfaces and processes that mitigate them.
So it's like he's trying to make this complex technology more human-friendly.
That's a great way to put it.
And we've seen that reflected in some of Ethereum's recent updates, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They've been really focused on streamlining transaction processes.
Yeah.
And just making the whole experience smoother.
Making it easier to use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that his engagement on X is significant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, over 5,000 mentions when he talks about these kinds of ideas.
So people are really interested in this intersection of cognitive science and technology.
They are, yeah.
Especially as it relates to something like Ethereum.
Right.
Which brings us back to our hidden parrot.
Oh, yes, full circle.
This thing that's got everyone on X so hooked today.
It's the perfect illustration of what Kahneman's talking about.
It really is.
Right. I mean, think about it. The challenge is often presented with a really short time limit.
Yeah, like 8 seconds.
8 seconds,
yeah.
Exactly. So you have to rely on your system one.
You don't have time to think it through.
Exactly. And that's where the illusion comes in.
Because your system one makes a quick judgment. But it might be wrong.
It might be. And if you took more time, if you engage your system too,
yeah,
you might see things differently.
So it's like the illusion is designed to trick our brains.
In a way, yeah. It's exploiting the way our fast thinking system works.
And it's working because everyone's talking about it.
It is. And it's part of this larger trend we're seeing this year. This whole explosion of gamified content.
Oh, yeah. It's everywhere.
And all of it is tapping into those same cognitive quirks that Kahneman explores in his book.
Which is something that, we've talked about before on the show. I mean, remember that deep dive we did into the whole #AI sci-fi challenge?
Oh, yeah, that was a fun one.
So where listeners know we're kind of obsessed with this whole thing, this intersection of technology and psychology.
It's a fascinating area.
And this parrot thing, it's just like the latest example of it.
It is. And it's a really visual one, too, which I think helps to bring the concepts to life.
Yeah, for sure.
So just to kind of sum it all up.
Yeah.
What we've been talking about today is that our brains have these two different ways of thinking.
System 1 and System 2.
Exactly. And this affects everything from how we see a simple image to how we make complex decisions.
And it's especially important to understand this in the digital world.
Right, because it affects how we interact with technology, how we engage with content. And Daniel Kahneman's book, it gives us this amazing framework for understanding these processes.
It really does. And it's not just theoretical. People like Vitalik Buterin are actually using these ideas to build better technology.
They're making a real difference.
So it's like understanding these two systems, it can help us make better decisions.
Yes.
It can help us be less susceptible to these illusions, these biases.
Yeah.
It can help us understand the world around us better.
Absolutely. And it can even help us create better technology.
So what's the big takeaway for our listeners?
Well, I would say the next time you see something online, whether it's a viral trend or a news story or even just an ad, take a moment to think about which system is at play.
Is it your gut reaction talking, or are you really thinking it through?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if it's your gut reaction, maybe slow down a bit.
Yeah.
Engage that system too. See if it changes your perspective.
Yeah.
It might surprise you.
And you know what I think is a really interesting question is, think back to when you first saw that parrot illusion.
Oh, yeah.
Did you spot it right away? Or did it take you a while?
Yeah.
And how do you think your initial reaction, that System 1 response, might have been different if you had approached it more deliberately, with more of a System 2 mindset?
That's a great question. And I think it applies to so many other areas of our lives, too.
Oh, totally. Like, think about decision-making at work or even in your personal life.
Right. Relationships, finances, everything.
It's like this hidden force that's shaping our choices all the time.
It really is. And the more we understand it, the better equipped we are to navigate the world around us.
That's a great place to end it, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
My pleasure.
This was really insightful.
Yeah, I had fun.
Me too.
Okay, cool.
Until next time.